Now that we have pretty much finished the existing conditions of this building, it's a common thing to want to print out a set of drawings to check and make sure everything looks right, everything is in place. It's very hard when you're in the 3D modeling environment to catch everything. There's always a mistake, there's always some accidental nudge or delete that you hit that kind of ruins one piece or another. So to put together this set, you need to do a bunch of standard drawings. Now, this is different than rendering. Don't forget, rendering is when you apply realistic looking materials and lighting, even geolocation, to make a model look like a photo. In our case, we just want some relatively simple, typically orthographic drawings and perhaps some perspectives, just to make sure everything looks like it should, and also to give us some base drawings to go on starting a new design. So one thing I noticed right off the bat here in this view is I have lost my decal. Now, it seems to be there, but it doesn't want to show. And one of the things, again, as you move forward, when you draw some types of objects, in particular masses, they don't show up by default in every view. I don't even remember which view I drew that mass in place that's behind this object. And I need to display masses in order to display the decal placed on it. So the first thing I can do in this 3D view, I can choose Edit, Visibility and Graphic Overrides. You can also type in VG. And if I scroll down in this list, I should see right next to Mass, no box, checked. So I'll just check that, hit Apply and OK, and with any luck, my sign will show up. And there it is. Okay. So already my check has come in handy. I can also see if there's any odd objects either floating up in the air or in the ground. I did add a bit of entourage to this model, some oil drums and other junk. So this is a great way to check what we're doing. So the first drawing that we'll start with is the site plan. And as we know, Revit creates all these views for us. I'm just going to go to my ready-made site plan. I may not like the way it looks, though. In particular, if you look at this site plan, you can see that I can see inside the building, and I have these giant elevation markers. Now, I prefer to have my exterior building elevation markers on the main floor plan, so I am going to hide these guys first. Now, as we have learned, there are many ways to do things. I could select these, right-click on them, and under Hide in View, hide the entire category. I could also do what I just did with the mass and go to the Visibility and Graphic Overrides. Honestly, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another. Now, another feature of this view here is that it is the wireframe view. So I'm going to go and change this to the realistic view. And let's see what we get. Oh, yep, there's our beautiful materials. And this is a great chance to check and see if your materials are actually even working. But also, if you remember, we didn't draw every road in Coalinga, California. We just kind of cropped it at a certain point. Revit comes with a crop region, as you may remember. If I click that button, nothing happens. Oh, nope, there it is. Here's the crop region. What this does, this crops away the rest of the model, just using kind of an adjusters here, these little dots. And I can decide how much of the adjacent site that I want to see. In this case, I honestly don't really want to see all that much of it. I really just care what's going on our site. So I can crop this view way down. I'll include the sidewalk just for the heck of it. And remember, adjusting the crop region only affects your current site. Now, of course, this is the site. We have the roof plan, but everything's kind of flat. It's hard to read without shadows. And to do the turn on shadows, first of all, there is a button that turns them on and off. You just click that and wait a minute and the shadows show up. Now, these shadows are kind of set by the default position of the model. We want to actually geolocate this model, which means tell Revit where it is in the universe, and that will give us more realistic shadows. So to do that, we click on where it says sun path on or off. If you click on that, a little menu pops up. And the sun path, by the way, is a, let's use the current settings, is basically a diagram of the kind of sun angles that you'll see in your project. I believe it doesn't really show up all that well in this view. You have to make it go back to a shaded view. Oh yeah, there's my sun path. Oh, except I've cropped it. Let's uncrop the view. There we go. Ah, there we go. That's the sun path that represents the path of the sun in whatever location that we have specified for our project. And actually, some people like to see that on their site plans. I think I'm going to leave it off because I don't really want to use it just yet. We'll use our rendering program to really work on studying shadows in this building. So let me just turn that off. But then if you go to the sun settings under the same menu, what you can find here is that there's a couple different settings. I think the lighting kind of in session is the default. And what that does, it just sets an altitude and an azimuth for the sun. Altitude is the height above the horizon. Azimuth is the angle from due south, I believe. So if I choose a still image, now I can go and specify the exact location. And you see here, it's got us in Boston, Massachusetts, which is lovely, but maybe not as nice as Coalinga, California. Let's see what it can find. Oh yeah, there we go. And of course, I could probably type in a very specific address, but I'm going to not get too hung up in the details and just do that. So if I hit apply and OK, and oh, I must have toggled my shadows off, I should see a recalculation and the new shadows show up appropriately. And of course, I can change the time of day to alter the angle of these shadows. Anywhere from 30 to 45 degrees is pretty traditional to help you read the roof. You can see here, we can see the angle of the roof coming off of that shadow. Just gives it a little bit of depth. So, for example, I want those shadows. I think I'd like a little bit more of an angle. So I'm going to make it a little later in the day. And you can see how when I make that change, it actually changes the angle. I like that 45-degree angle. Just brings back memories of hand drafting using that 45-degree triangle to get my shadows to look just right. One other thing that you can do to kind of gussy up this view is take a look at some of the advanced graphic display options. So under that little sugar cube that controls the view properties, there's this graphic displays option menu. And this is a fun one to play around with, and really where you can control the way your model looks with a high degree of specificity. So for example, let's go back to realistic view. And I'm going to hit apply and see what things look like to see if I like it. And yeah, I want to see more patterning. Maybe I don't like the way the concrete looks, and I'll go back and change that. We're not going to get into the minutia of changing materials right now, but be sure to find ones that you like. Anyway, there's a couple of other things that you can do here. You can add in things like transparency. I can modify the shadows to cast ambient shadows, and this looks particularly nice. It adds what's called ambient occlusion. See how it just gives it a tiny bit of depth. Usually it's either a little darker or a little lighter along the edges and the corners. You can add sketchy lines. I am not a big fan of the sketchy lines, mainly because I prefer the way the SketchUp sketchy lines look. These, I don't know, they look lame in my opinion. Sorry, there, folks at Autodesk. There's other things, depth cueing, which I believe does not work unless you're in perspective. Lighting, of course, we just set the sun, so we're going to do most of the settings there, but I believe you can make the shadows a wee bit darker. Let's see what happens. Does that look darker? I don't know if that looks darker. And that may be, it's of course a matter of personal preference. You can drag it way down and make them a lot lighter. I don't know. I liked in the middle there somewhere. It's pretty good. And then finally, the realistic setting here. And what this can do, this one I particularly like when you're early in design and you're going to be rendering this puppy in Lumion or some other software. And so you don't want to be too distracted by colors. This, I can come in here and color correct this image and just make it a little grayer. And the reason that's nice, there's a touch of color in there, but early on you don't want to be distracted by what are basically placeholder materials, those we're going to be working on later on. So anyway, and there's all sorts of options, and these are really handy. Now, the one thing that is also really handy is once you get it the way you like it, you can save it as a view template. And when you do that, I'll just click Save as View Template. All you do is give it a name, and I'll just call it Rendered Orthographic View. And OK, and nothing happens, and except that a new menu pops up with the view templates. And there are actually a lot of features of view templates. For example, I could change the scale. And you do have to be a little bit careful because scale obviously affects the size, physical size of the drawings on a sheet of paper. And this site plan, I'm not exactly sure how big that's going to be when I make it 1/4 inch, but I can hazard a guess. And so I'll make that view scale 1/4 inch. I can even change the display, how the model's displayed, the detail level, and you can even get into the nitty-gritty of visibility and graphic overrides. Even that view range that we talked about, you can set these up well in advance. And I'm going to, instead of show all, I'm going to set the view phase filter to show complete. So there's a lot of different features here, but then just hit OK and it saves it. You hit apply and not really anything changes except perhaps that phase filter, because I'd already used all the settings. And my advice is, oh, see, it didn't change the phase filter. Well, what do you know? We'll choose show complete and apply. And it shouldn't change the way your model looks, at least not yet. Anyway, so that's how you can use that save view template. You can use that in other views. It saves you a lot of time tweaking all these different view elements, especially if you're doing things like sketchy lines or whatever, shadows that are very particular. So let's work on the floor plan next, and you can see I've cropped away in my floor plan view the rest of the model. I'll zoom in on this guy, make sure that everything looks as it should, and you may be able to tell my model is actually working a little bit slowly here. And one thing you can do, let me hide my crop region first of all, but the other thing I can do is any views that are open that are using that realistic style, you're going to want to close those views. I'm just going to close it, and I'm going to hit save to make sure that I don't lose any of my progress, which is never a good thing. And now's a good time to look and see, like, does everything look correct? Are the materials right? And in particular, I've just noticed, oh, I need a bathroom here. I have these 2 doors for the 2 bathrooms, but I haven't actually put the bathroom in. So I can just make a few more instances of my, my interior partition. And let me just draw it here from the center of this little piece of the wall. I'll give myself a nice little bathroom. And again, nice thing about Revit is it's so easy to add and subtract things. You know, you can use your endpoints and midpoints and whatnot. Just make sure that the drawing looks nice and clean, that the wall joins and whatnot work. And the other thing, of course, as you look at these plans, you do actually want to think about whether or not you like them. And in this case, I think I'd like to add some flooring maybe into this main area. And to do that, I'll use my split face tool, maybe split this floor. I'll just draw a line. Remember, when you're using split face, you have to go from either from edge to edge, or alternatively, you have to go make a continuous loop. So anyway, now I can go to my paint bucket, and I think I have some vinyl tile that I can paint on here, which apparently is invisible because I'm not in realistic view. Here we go. Now we're in realistic view. We should see some vinyl tile. Oh, except those tiles, those are really tiny. Well, all right. I like those, though. They make me a little woozy, but I like them. So I'm going to stick with them. Now, if you remember, we did use a view template. We created one with our site plan. Let's apply that to the current view. So just go to the View menu, which would be where View Stuff is found, and I'm going to apply a template. Now, you do have to remember what you labeled it, and I think I called this Rendered Orthographic View. If you're not seeing it here, you might want to go to the All setting here so it doesn't filter it for just floor plans. Anyway, if I hit Apply Properties, we should see the sun turn on and some of the other graphic settings that we had. in this template be applied. And what's nice about that is, as in the site plan, those shadows are actually very helpful in reading your plan. It just gives it a teeny tiny bit of depth. I also, the ambient occlusion, it just gives it a little more realism without actually having to render anything. So one of the other pet peeves that I have about Revit is the way it displays poché. And poché, there's a couple of ways that you can kind of fix the problem of it not showing properly. If this was just a regular sort of construction documents style floor plan where everything is in black and white and you just want the pattern to show up consistently, you can do this on the Manage tab. There's something called phases. And what phases are, in any project, usually there's something existing and usually there's something new. Often there's multiple phases and you can add in more phases here. Let's say you need to demolish part of something, salvage it, move something out of the way. There could be multiple phases. Each of those phases can be filtered in different ways, and we've set the phase filter to our views to show complete. And the reason that we do that, often it renders better, but also, especially if you're using Enscape or some other program, but also we can override the filters here in this menu. So if we override everything that's existing, or everything, sorry, that's new, this is the existing column. Then when you go to the graphic overrides, you could make, say, the cut pattern or the surface pattern some very specific color. I don't know, let's choose a nice, lovely green, and OK, and OK, and apply, and OK. And what you should see if you have the phase filter set correctly is that your walls turn green. Okay, so that's great, but I think in our project we're going for this more realistic view. So let me go back and reapply my view template. And I could also use Photoshop, but the easiest thing is actually if I know what the walls are made out of, and most of them are made out of the default wall material, there is a way using the Manage tab and going to the Materials menu that I can find that material and I can actually just change it. And I believe this one is called the default wall material. Let's see if we can find it. Ah, yes, there it is. And what's cool about that is I can just change the color. Just change it right here. I'll pick it off of this. Oh, what green should I use? I can never decide. Sepia was in vogue when I was in school. Gotta love sepia. Hit apply and OK. And of course, we would want to make sure that it uses the rendered appearance for shaded views. This will make it look correct in all views. And click OK. And now you have this lovely new color for your rendered drawings. What's nice about doing it this way is that it should, in plans and in sections, reflected ceiling plans, the poché should match. The only bummer is that objects like columns, you'll have to go and figure out what the default material for the columns are and change that too. And it looks like there is no material assigned to it, so we can actually just pick the same material, the default wall, and put it on these solid objects, and hopefully they'll change color as well. And there they go, they change color. So this is one very quick way that you can do it. Another option, a third option, again, it's always nice to have different ways to do things, is using the Object Styles menu. And what this does is anywhere in the model, you can kind of override a material. So for example, any column, let's say I have 5 different kinds, I could come in here and assign that default wall material. And now all columns in the entire model in any view will take that view property. And that's actually kind of handy in a number of settings. One last thing is when setting up this plan is be aware that if you remember in my demonstration, I had one model that I brought in as a component inside an entourage component, and one I just brought in as a gas pump. Sometimes these will display improperly. So, and if you use the graphic overrides, the object styles overrides, they will only behave if they have been put inside a family. And even then, SketchUp objects can behave somewhat irregularly. So let's put some dimensions on our project. And to do that, you go to the Annotate tab. That's where you'll find all of our handy dandy dimensions. And This is great for just, in our case, we don't want a full set of construction documents, but we want to tell people roughly how big this building is. I'm going to measure it from the outside to the outside of the building. A general rule for dimensions is to keep them off of the plan, especially this is a design plan, so we do want them to look cool. Also, if you want subdivisions, you can come back and edit these lines. Now, typically, if you're doing something like this, you'll want to go to the midpoint of the walls rather than the outer face. So let me just zoom in enough so that I can get to the midpoint and then click up here to divide them. The other thing is, don't forget that small dimensions, fractions, don't really make sense in this instance where we're just trying to give an overall dimension of these objects. We aren't being that precise. So you can type in UN for units. You can also go to the Manage tab and find it somewhere in there. I don't know where. Anyway, and you can change the distance. Normally it's displayed as feet or whoops, not the distance, the length. Length is the one that we're worried about. It's normally displayed as feet and fractional inches. We are going to round these off to the nearest inch. So you can just check that box and it will round it everywhere. You can also suppress the 0 foot note there. Absolutely, it's kind of up to you. There's no graphic standard. And when you do these sorts of things, and you're in an office, they will have their own graphic standards for how they like to see things. For me, this is just fine. However, you may also want to change the font. We love fonts. Fonts are absolutely one of the best things to play with, and a great way to waste a day when you have something due. And to do that, like we do with everything else in Revit, you want to mess with the family. In this case, the linear dimension style family. I'm just going to choose Edit Type. I'll duplicate this guy and I'll make it, whatever, custom, and click OK. And in the properties is where you can define all the good features, the dimension of the font. They don't exactly make it as nice as something like InDesign where you can read all the fonts and all that very easily. But basically, here's the text size, and then down at the bottom it has the font. And you do kind of have to know your fonts in order to change this because they don't give you a preview. But here, let's scroll this up so at least we can see them a little better. And you can see here that they have all the usual fonts, the system fonts. So we could go and use that one that we were using in for the signage, but I don't think that would be ideal. So let's hit Apply and OK. And you should see the font change. I used Century Gothic. I happen to like that particular one. Another thing you can change if you want to customize your views, you can come up here and the tick mark, the actual kind of angled piece that we have. Well, it doesn't have to be the angled piece that we normally see. We can come in here and change it. This is, unfortunately, the way Revit labels things. Sometimes it doesn't jump out at you as like, oh, that's the tick mark. Wouldn't it be nice if it actually had a picture of it? But such is life. Anyway, you can come in here. You can have triangle filled. You can have an open dot. You can have a filled dot. Let's go with a same size object, but a filled dot. Hit Apply. And wait a minute, and OK. And now you can see that you have a kind of very different look to it. Here, let's change this one to be that custom style that we created, and it should update. So you can kind of get a look to these objects. Actually, now that I look at it, those numbers they're a little, the dots are a little dark, so I'm going to make them that smaller size. But I think this is fine. I don't think you can change the color of those tick marks. Not inside Revit. You can actually make custom sizes, but not the color. So life is not perfect. To add in some room names, it's pretty straightforward. There is a text tool. Gosh, how much easier could it get? Actually, it could be easier. Well, first of all, like before, you can choose a text size. 1/4 inch Arial. Here, I'll draw one of those. Whoa, it's pretty big. Pretty big. So let's not use 1/4 inch Arial. Let's use 3/4 inch, but let's make it our custom style. So like we did before, duplicate it, and we'll just call this one custom. I suppose we could call it century Gothic. But what you'll find is that everybody's very anal about their own fonts, right? We all love to have a look to our projects. We could also bold these by default. I think maybe I'll do that. Also, you can control the background and what happens in the background, transparent versus opaque. I'm going to go with opaque just because I have a lot of materials on here. Also, some people like the look of a border. Let's put one on just for the heck of it. You don't have to if you don't want, but I'm going to. And then drawing text is pretty much the same as it is anywhere else in the universe. You draw a box and you type in the text. So I'm going to put room names or area names for most of the elements here. So don't forget that like any other kind of text, you can control the justification left, right, and also top, bottom. And this is nice when you're drawing the box that has the text in it. You can actually draw the box. Here, let's make a new one, and we'll draw it here, and we'll call it, filling area. And it should, when you're done, if your setting is the same, which apparently it was not, it will center it into that area here. Let's do center and middle. And there you go. It centers it into that area. Now, also, if you hold down Control, you can copy that object and it will retain the features that you had. I think I'll not label the toilets because it's pretty obvious what those are. But this is nice because now I can come in here and I can edit this area and just type in office. Also, some people may prefer the look of all caps. In the old days, everything was all caps. But nowadays, I think because it's typed, we're not actually quite as picky about that. Now, I am noticing that the boxes, I don't actually like the way the boxes look on these guys. So let me select a piece of text and edit it, and then tell it to not have that border because it looks silly. So, okay, there we go. And now you have labeled your plan and made it have dimensions. So pretty much a finished floor plan. Well, okay, you're never really done. I totally forgot that I want to have some sections. And there are two kinds of sections in the world, two kinds of building sections anyway. Transverse and longitudinal. Longitudinal, typically, I don't know, is the long way, left to right. And transverse is 90 degrees to that, typically. I'm going to go to the View tab and use the Section tool. It's pretty straightforward. You just click once to start it and once to finish it. These do stay on the orthogonal grid, so make sure when you're drawing a section, here I'll draw the transverse one, make sure that they follow those constraints, 90 degrees, no funny angles. Now, when you have a section, you want to make sure it cuts through something interesting. And in this case, maybe I'll have it go through the storage room, one so that I can be sure to show all the columns and not half a toilet. Often it is nice to go through a door, so maybe I'll try to go through the storage room and the door. And there we go. I think I can nudge it. I'm just nudging it left to right. Just be aware of this crop region here. This is actually how far it will crop. If you have stuff you want to get rid of, you don't want to show in that section, drag it in and it will make those things disappear from your section view. You can also crop it down. We don't need to show all of kind of the extent of this project. We just really want to show the building itself. So same with this one. Let's just check, snug in this depth here. And if you have a lot of things in the distance, the fencing, for example, again, you want to pull that in. So let's see, what have we wrought? Oh, and these are not filled in because basically they won't fill in until they're on the sheet. Oh, finally, right, when you want to clean up these drawings, you can move the text. I'm just selecting it and clicking the dot on it, which is the grip. And that allows you to move it out of the way. Just makes it a little clearer when you are when you're looking at the plan. So one last thing about sections before we actually go and look at them is that, as far as I know, there's no way to actually change the line weight of the lines going across here. Sure would be nice. There is a line work tool, and you can change things to other lines to a different line weight, but it doesn't seem to work. I could make doors, walls, other things, change their line work. It doesn't seem to work on sections. The one thing that you can do is if you get the properties of the section and choose edit type, you can tell it to apply a specific view template to any sections, and that's awfully handy, just saves you one step. The other thing is sections will take the properties of the view that they're in, including the scale. So I think this is at 1/8 inch scale. Let's make it 1/4 inch scale here. I think what that means is that when we get to the sections, they may or may not already be set to the wrong scale. And anyway, you see how the text gets a lot smaller, and it's just because basically the plan got a lot bigger. And if you're wondering how big is that plan, show the crop region and select it, and it will tell you here on the properties bar how big the plan is. This is super helpful because we are putting these on physical sheets to scale, so it would be nice to know if they actually fit on the sheet. And sometimes you want to make that floor plan a little bigger. In our case, this is just existing conditions, so 1/4 inch is just fine. And I can actually select both of these section marks and change them to 1/4 inch over here in the properties of the icon, which is kind of amazing, really, that it can do that. There's other things, including the view template, that I can also apply if I hadn't already done it. Oh, except where's my favorite view template? Here we go, rendered ortho view. Hit apply and OK. You don't see it, and you won't until you go to that section view. I usually just right-click on these and choose Go to View. And there you go. You can see that it is a lovely rendered section. Now, a couple things you can do to clean things up. First of all, I can hide the crop region, so I don't need that. And in this case, I think I'm going to get rid of these marks. I don't really need them in this case, so I'm just going to hide the elements, or I suppose I could hide the whole category in this particular view. And one cool thing is once you have multiple sections in the section, transverse section will show up in this view, the actual icon indicating where it is. And that's super helpful just to make sure you're showing everything you should be. Speaking of which, we should not be seeing this door. Sometimes this happens. It's particularly annoying with SketchUp objects where you get an object that just shouldn't be there. It may just be where the section is placed. So I can just hide those views, hide those elements in this particular view. Zooming in on my section, again, we're looking for things that look funny, and this looks a little funny. The fascia is actually solid throughout. It's got this kind of blue material, and then the roof itself is gray, and we want that to match the poche of the floor and the walls and all that. We'd love it if it would match. So let's see, how can we do that? Well, let's figure it out. What the material is made out of, well, it's probably the default roof material. So if I come in here, choose edit the structure, the structural material here is actually made, well, it's made out of the roof material. Now, I don't want to change that because that's the color I've painted the actual roof. So maybe I'll just come in here and I'll do what I did with the walls. I'll add a new layer and I'll move it up and make it a finished layer. And that way I can assign the roof material here. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay. And then the structural material, I'll just make it default roof. And that way I can come in here, if I can spell, default floor, default roof. Here we go. That way I can change the default roof color to that lovely green that I want to have show up everywhere in as my poche. Doesn't solve the... oh, I forgot to give it a thickness. That was probably silly. Let's make this a 1/2 inch thick layer, and then I'll change this thickness so that all my levels don't get off. And hopefully this will work. Apply and OK. And you will see that now there's a layer in there, but largely the poche is matching. The fascia poses a different problem because it's basically solid. If I select it here, choose Edit Type, there's the material. If you remember, we made it blue. Now, absolutely, I could come in and change it to the default roof material, and that would solve my poche problem. Let's go default roof. There we go. Make it green and apply and OK. And now it all looks perfect, and it should look the same in all section views, and it does. However, now if I look in 3D, I suspect that we have a problem, which is now my roof is a different finish. So probably in this one, I think I would just allow it to have a slightly different color because it's a royal pain to repaint all of these outdoor stripes. Now, that said, if you want to be particular, absolutely, I would change it back. I'm going to just hit undo and make everything go back to blue to save myself the effort of painting every corner of the outside of the building. So, and one last thing you can do with the sections is rename them. And you can actually do that here in Plan. The reason I like to do that is I usually do the transverse and longitudinal. The longitudinal is left to right. That's the way I do it. I don't know why I do it. But anyway, if you select the section symbol, you can actually change the name right here. It's down towards the bottom of this. So this is the longitudinal section. Hit apply. It doesn't look any different here, but the name will change up top. And same with this one. We'll name this transverse here. Transverse. So you should go and work on the opposite one that we did just now in the video. You can do that one on your own. Just match the graphics. Make sure that it looks correct. Exterior elevations are actually not that hard to do. The trick is finding the symbols. I'm going to uncrop this plan view, and here's the symbols. They're way out here. They show up outside of the crop region, and maybe I'll extend my crop region a little bit just so that I can get these symbols in there. And because literally the location of the symbols is important. Let me just drag that out a little bit. Stretch it out and drag in the symbols. And if you haven't seen them before, they basically look like a box with a kind of hat on it that the hat is pointing in the direction of the elevation. And you can absolutely choose to have elements of the site in these elevations. Same with sections. You can turn them into site sections. However, in our case, the elevation symbol is fine. There are some other elevation symbols. I think there's one other one that you can use for exterior elevations, but let's just stick with the default one for now. And if you zoom in on it, you can see that the text, which will be filled out when we get these on sheets, should be solid text. So we just have to make sure that the text is the kind of text that we like. So let me continue cropping the view, and then let's adjust the crop region so that I thought I did this, but apparently I didn't. I don't know what I was changing. Make sure that it goes out far enough so that you can see those elevation symbols. Of course, now I've made my plan a little bit bigger than I was hoping, bigger than the original plan, but here we go. We'll stretch it out enough that we can see all of the elevation symbols, but not make it so big that it takes up the whole sheet. There we go. Nice and snug. Let's recrop and hide that crop region so we don't see it. And the elevations are typically labeled north, south, east, west. That's kind of the tradition. And even before we get to them, we can go and do a number of things, change the scale. We've been doing everything at 1/4 inch scale. That's probably fine. And I believe we can apply a view template down here. Let's use our favorite view template, the rendered view. So let's go back to all and rendered ortho view, hit apply. Now, you don't actually see any of those changes until you get to the elevation views. So let's take a look. So here's one of our elevation views. That's the east one. Let's take a look at the north one, the south one, and the west one. Each one looks very similar, of course. Now, just like our sections, we don't I don't think we really need to show these guys here, these level marks. We can hide them in this view. We can also, because these views all share a lot of properties, we can select them by holding down Shift here in the Properties menu, and we can actually change features of all of them all at once. Not that one though. So let's select this. I'm going to hide it in this view, hide the whole category. The other thing that's funny about elevations is they typically show the ground, right? But they don't show what's below the ground. You usually have like kind of a heavy line. So let's show our crop region, see if we can figure out where that is, and then crop the view up onto the ground line, or at least close to it. And then if it doesn't show the way we like, or if we want to kind of enhance it a little bit, we can, let me drag these in, we can draw in a heavy line using what's called a detail line. And detail lines are a form of annotation. So you tap the Annotate button, and you can come in here, and there's a button for detail lines. You can type in DL. And then there are a number of different line styles. So if I choose wide lines, you can basically draw these anywhere. I'm going to draw them here on the ground, kind of right where the ground line is. I believe that's this. And I'll just draw it all the way across. And you can see it's a nice heavy black line. Now, and this line, again, it's just in this view. It's just a detail line. Now, I tend to like that line to be a little heavier. This one doesn't really feel like the ground to me. So we can go to the Manage tab and change the line settings. There's a whole section here under Additional Settings, and this is deep into the underpinnings of Revit. If you go to Line Styles and click the little plus box here, this is where all of your lines are defined. Their line pattern, their line color. This is all in this magic menu. So I can make a new one, and I'll just call it ground, because that's what it is. And then I'll make this a nice heavy line weight. These numbers are not dimensions. They're just numbers on a chart somewhere. But I'll make it black and solid, and apply and OK. And now I can select this line, and this new line type is here, and it should come in nice and dark. Oh, look at that. That is a nice heavy ground line. Now, when it's that heavy, that actually may be too heavy for this scale. I don't know. It might cover up some of the details, so you'll want to nudge it down. And in fact, I think it is probably too heavy. So I'll go back to the Manage tab, to the Additional Settings, Line Styles, and let's make it just a wee bit less. Let's make it 7 instead of 9. Let's see if that looks any better. Okay, but you do want it to be a nice heavy line. There we go. That looks very good. And then finally, in this view, you will want to not show the crop region. And elevations, in design drawings anyway, I don't really think it's necessary to have these section marks. So I'm going to hide those as well. And there you go. There's your elevation. Oh, there is one other thing. Sometimes the shadows look really nice, like in this view. But in other views, sometimes those shadows don't look quite as nice. In this case, it's looking a little dark in there. So you might experiment with the graphic display options. Except, oh, right, there's a template applied. And when there is a template applied, you can't mess with any visual options until you remove that template. So I'm going to go to the properties of this elevation, and I'm going to make the template none, and apply, and OK. And it retains whatever the settings were before. But now I can come in and change these graphic display options. I'm going to take a look at the shadows here and maybe turn them off, but just use the ambient shadows. That might look a little better than having the shadows cast. I don't know. It looks a little dark to me, but on the other hand, I do like seeing the shadows on the edge of the roof. Maybe I'll keep them and just go through each elevation. They probably should all match. So by all means, choose which one you think looks correct. I think this one is probably fine. Interior elevations work in a very similar way to exterior elevations, except that they're on the inside. That's why they're called interior elevations. And the way they work, you go to the View tab. It's that same elevation option, except when we go to the elevation tool, make sure that you choose interior versus building elevation. Now, when you place the interior elevation symbol, and maybe I'll make this hidden line just for the moment so you can see what it looks like. It puts in a circle with a kind of witch's cap on it, and that Revit will guess what the extents of the space are that you want to draw an interior elevation. And again, this should be review for everybody. If you click the symbol here, you can add all of the interior elevations. They are typically labeled west, south, east, and north based on the cardinal directions of your project. And those interior elevations, let's go and take a look at them. Revit has created a new category here for your interior elevations. And what you will want to do is rename each of these. And you can do it the way we rename the section by selecting it here in Plan and going and choosing the name. In this case, it's West. There we go. You'll see a change in the menu here. So I would change those all at once. Now, once you've renamed these, I actually don't like to see the names here. I think I don't know, graphically, I think it looks kind of stupid, frankly. So you can go to Edit Type, and the elevation tag is the thing that's bugging me, so I can go to that. And the elevation mark in the elevation tag, this is the one we can just go circle a filled arrow, but without the view name. Hit apply and OK and apply and OK, and there you go. No more view names in there, which frankly just looks a little bit neater. And as I did with the exterior elevations, the interior elevations, you can select them all in the project browser, and you can apply that favorite view template. Again, you have to choose all and then find your rendered ortho view. And then let's take a look at one of these, see what they look like. This is the south elevation. Now, Revit does not like interior elevations. It does them strangely. And I bet you we could probably change the view template for interior elevations, but a couple things. We don't typically show these levels, so let's hide that category. We also don't typically show these in interior elevations, these section marks. You absolutely can. And I'm sure the first office that you work in, they will say, why aren't you showing those? But the thing you definitely do not show in interior elevations is the floor thickness and the ceiling or roof thickness. So what you need to do is select the crop region and drag it down so that you are not showing those. And Revit, and I'm just literally using the crop region to crop it away, it will usually kind of snap to the edge of the material, but you can see here the roof, it's just not doing it. It's not doing the outer surface. And that's okay. Life is not perfect, but it's pretty close. The other thing, this is definitely a situation where we are going to want to de-apply or unapply the view template, apply, make it none, and then get rid of the sun here under graphic display options. And the reason is because interiors, they just don't often look as good with the sun. The shadows get a little too dark. Revit can't handle it. But the ambient shadows do actually look pretty good. The last thing is the outside, the perimeter of interior elevations usually wants to be a nice dark line, and we're not getting that nice dark line. But we can override this crop region. I've just selected the crop region and right-clicked on it. We can override that element's graphics in just this one kind of instance here. And what you can do, let's make the line weight black and the line color black and the line weight, let's go with 7 just to get some drama. See how dark that is? That is a typical interior elevation. Nice heavy black line for the outside. Sometimes what you'll see, let's go to one of our other elevations. Sometimes what you'll see is if there are any irregular ins and outs, or if you have a very deep windowsill, for example, people will actually edit this crop region, or crop region, and make it follow the kind of contours of the interior space. So for example, I can drag this in until it gets to kind of the window. I think this is the window, and then drag it back out again and have it return all the way down. Some people, again, if you have a deep crown molding, you absolutely could follow that molding, use any of your tools to try and select each of the bits and pieces here. I think I've missed a piece, and this is perhaps not the scale to be doing the base here at quite such an extraordinary size. Here, let me just clean all this up by using my join tool, because it's getting kind of ludicrous. But you can see that it kind of has these ins and outs that are actually quite, they really look nice in an interior elevation, particularly, again, if you have a very historic space, something like that, that has a lot of ins and outs. This can look really nice. And that really has a nice look to it. Again, just kind of shows off some of the unique features of the interior, which we don't have a lot of in our space other than that cute little piece of wall base. So axonometrics are great drawings for showing the whole project. Just be aware, I think sometimes you'll see that when you save a PDF of your drawing, it kind of goes on out forever. And it just is this tiny little building way out in the middle of nowhere. So do check that crop region and make sure that it's not a million miles from your building. The other thing is, be sure to turn on that section box and hit apply. And it can be a little confusing because you now have a section box and you have your crop region. So the drawing, there's a lot of things going on. So, it might be nice to have enough of the road to show some of the context. But a cool thing about the section box, if in your project you wanted to, I don't know, say show cut through the roof, it is really nice because all the settings that you've created to this point, they will show up here if you cut through a wall or a roof or a fascia. Those graphic display, the poche, should match. And often people will have the section box active but hidden. So in the end, we can have this section box on. I'm going to hide this element, and then I'm going to turn off the visibility of the crop region. And like magic, there is your beautiful axonometric view. Now, axonometrics, by the way, are typically 30 or 45 degrees. You can use the click on the corner of the view cube to get a true axonometric. If it doesn't show as much as you like, by all means, you can change the angle just by rotating it ever so slightly. I think I like this a little bit better. 30 degrees is a true axon. One really cool thing that you can do with a 3D view, actually with any view, any three-dimensional view, but this axonometric view, is create an exploded axonometric. And so I can just duplicate this 3D view, duplicate with detailing here, and I can rename this exploded axon, exploded axon. And maybe I'll bring back the crop region. I really just want to show the building and not necessarily all this other stuff. Maybe I'll just hide all this other stuff, tell you the honest truth. Hide. I'll just hide the whole category. There we go. So now I just have the building. And you can create individual pieces here. I'm going to select the roof, and maybe I will just move that out of the way. And what you do is you select the elements you want to move, and you click on the Displace Elements button. And then a little gizmo appears, and you can move these objects up. Oh, looks like I had some objects that I wanted to add in here. If I choose Edit, I can click on objects that I want to add by just clicking on them here. See how they jump right up. And now I have my whole roofs coming up. If I want to change them, I just click on them and they move up as a group. And then same with these structural elements, these beams that I put in. These are joists, I guess. And I can displace these guys and drag them up. And that's a really cool view because it shows how everything is kind of put together. And then finally, maybe I'll drag this guy way up here just so it's above everything else. Just a fun view. This one, I probably would turn off the sun, so I would go through and change the display options so that I don't have that. The other thing that you can do in this view is you can add in paths that kind of indicate where things came from, and that can be kind of useful. To just kind of understanding these drawings, because especially if you're going out and up, that can be quite confusing. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot that you can do once the lines and drawings are in. So, you know, if they don't actually, I wish this didn't only went to the roof. I think I'm going to have to delete that one. But anyway, that's an exploded axon, and maybe I'll make this one a smaller scale. I think I've been going with 1/4 inch scale. Axons in general can be a larger scale. So my regular axon here, I'll rename this one Axonometric. That can be at 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch because they're such a dramatic drawing, they really show an awful lot. And one cool thing about the section box is that if you have some detail, say a stair that you want to highlight, you can actually select that object and click on the section box tool. Click on that and it opens it up. Whoa, we're way zoomed out. It opens it up basically with a view with the section box cropping away the rest of the model. And let me turn that section box, unhide it, and bring it back on it. It takes the properties of your last view. But this can be a really great way to kind of isolate one piece. You know, maybe it would be nice to see the roof here. And now you can really see how these pieces all fit together. And actually what I see is that my columns don't go all the way up to the roof. So I guess these should be a little bit taller. What's really cool in Revit is that anything can be edited kind of in any view. So if I make this 1'4", I think will get me up to the roof. Oh, no, 1'2", 6, 1'6". I got my numbers mixed up here. That'll get me right up to the roof. So this can kind of show how things are all put together. In this case, I'm just showing the detail of the roof edge here where the columns meet, but you could really do this with any detail. Interestingly enough, perspectives seem like the most complicated drawings, but they're actually really easy to create. And we can do that here in the View menu. Just choose the Camera tool. That tool is hidden up here as well. And let's do an interior view and an exterior view. I'll just place the camera and drag it across my site plan here. Just don't forget to click beyond your building so that you get the whole thing. And in your 3D view, it has a crop region already active, and you can stretch out this view as you see fit. Don't forget, you have this steering wheel, which allows you to manipulate the view in some pretty interesting ways. So for example, that fence was kind of in the way. I can use this up or down tool. I can use the look tool to create a much nicer perspective view. And we don't do a huge amount of rendering inside Revit, so it's not absolutely critical. Most of our view composition will be done in Lumion, but you can see here you can make yourself quite a nice view of your project. And like we've been doing, we can come in here and find our view template and apply our favorite view template. Just so handy. What's nice about this, it's just a quick way to make all the views kind of match. Now, one thing in the elevation views that must have been part of the template is that there was actually a sky view in the background, and that's kind of nice. So let's see if we can add that in. I have unapplied the view template, and now I can go to my graphic display options, and you'll see down here at the background there is an option. On this tab here, I can choose sky. Makes it just a kind of nice sky color. Gradient is also nice. Either of these are fine. And if you absolutely want to, you can choose photo, and you can put some kind of customized image in there. I think I'm just going to go with the sky view, or maybe gradient. Gradient. I think I like gradient the best. Okay. And that gives me a kind of a horizon line in a very generic background. You know, that's actually quite a nice view. I know a lot of people really like to have the sketchy lines in their perspective views, but this one is fine for me. Interior views, like I said, sometimes you have to worry about the sun and the shadows not working quite so well, but the same process applies. So I added in the gradient for the sky. Now, one thing with interior views, they do tend to be a little bit more distorted than exterior views, just because you kind of don't have a natural camera option. You know, you're so close to objects that they just get distorted. One thing you can do in your steering wheel, there is a down arrow on the lower right that has some kind of more advanced options, and one of these is changing the focal length. And I'm going to just drag that up and down so you can see what happens. Basically, it's not moving the camera, it's making things more distorted, or if I drag it the other way, less distorted. You'll have to decide how much distortion is too much distortion. But in this case, I think a sort of moderate distance is probably about right for this project. So I'll stretch that out. And there you go. You've got yourself an interior view, just like the exterior. So the last thing we need to do here is to wrap this up in a pretty bow is to make some sheets of drawings with our drawings on them. And you make a new sheet by just right-clicking on where it says Sheets in the project browser. However, we only have one template in here. We could absolutely make a new family, just start from scratch, but I find it actually is nice to load in from the Autodesk library here. Just drag in. Let's go to Home and find title blocks. There they are. And they have a 24 by 36, or actually kind of a 22 by 34 title block. And the reason that I like to use that is just it makes it has some of the text and things in there that's kind of nice. So now when I've loaded that in, I have a blank sheet of drawing. Now, of course, nobody wants to be an advertisement for Autodesk, so I'm just going to double click on this title block, and you can actually get the real dimensions of this thing. So it's actually 2'10" by they leave a very large border by 1'10". So that we can actually make this a wee bit bigger if we want to, by just nudging these guys up a little bit, and same with nudging the outer boundary out. Actually, maybe I'll just nudge this boundary out. So because in the old days you would leave a very large space on the left for the staple that would go on your incredibly giant sheet of thick sheet of drawings. In our case, we don't need those. Now, the other thing is we can get rid of all this stuff. We can just delete it. And you can. It's nice because now you can see kind of how this sausage was made. There's all sorts of pieces here, just basically lines that you can modify. And you can just take your lines, stretch them out here. I mean, absolutely, I could put in custom pictures and things like that. Again, we've done this. We've seen this rodeo before. But the other thing is you can come in here and have the project name be on the vertical edge of the sheet of drawings. Now, you may decide you want this to be more designy, and maybe we get rid of these lines altogether. I think that might actually look nice. I'm looking at them and I'm like, we don't need all these lines. And we don't really have a client, so I'm going to get rid of that one too. And you might say, where does all this information come from? And this information actually comes from your project information back in your project. So I'm going to change this label. I'll just leave the label the way it is. So here's my custom title block. I'm going to load it into the project and overwrite the existing version. So here we go. I just have a simpler thing. I'm just going to fill up this sheet with drawings. But to get the project information into the title block here, some things you type right in here. So if you want to change the number, you can change it to A1 or something like that. And you can change information here. But if you go to the Manage tab, there is a whole project information menu, and you can come in at anything that is using a label on the title block. That label will reference these items. So for example, if we want the issue date to be consistent, we could call this issue date the same, and it will, or put in an issue date, and it will change them all. So if I hit OK, you'll see the number changes here. Not every object is in there, so like obviously the drawn by and checked by, that is going to be sheet by sheet. The other thing is I can probably get rid of this timestamp. That's kind of more of a professional thing. Again, you can just go back to your title block, wherever your title block was. Oh, here it is. And you can just delete these things that you don't want. I'm going to get rid of that. And I'll get rid of this border because I don't really want the border. I'll try to get rid of the border. Maybe I don't want to get rid of the border. Maybe it's part of the template. It probably is part of the template. So anyway, load this guy back in, and it should get rid of that yucky timestamp. So you do have a lot of control. And again, if you like the way it looks, you can stick with that, but you absolutely can move the objects around. I think I like this a little farther down and over. And maybe these guys, I'll just leave them as is. And now it's just a matter of dragging your views from the project browser into the sheet and make sure that they all make sense and are legible. So for example, we probably will go with the order that we set these views up. I'll drag in the site plan, and you can see it comes in with its own title. Oh, and I guess my scale is off. If your scale is off, you can just change it here in the view properties. What's really nice about Revit is that it does have this ability to kind of edit things in many different locations. And you can see here that scale doesn't quite fit onto my sheet. So maybe I'm going to have to go with the next scale down from 1/4 inch. Let's try 3/16 and apply. And again, Revit will happily adjust the title, which you can move separately. Don't forget that if you click on the view, that allows you access to this adjuster. It doesn't adjust it automatically. If you want to move the title block, you have to move it by clicking on it without clicking on the overall view. So there's my site plan. Now, there's a couple ways you can lay out these sheets, but one very typical way is to start on the right and go to the left. Why do we do that? It's just the way we do it. Also, I think it's to keep it away from the binder here. So I'll drag on my ground floor plan here, and that hopefully will fit. And this, I believe, is already at 1/4 inch scale. So I can drag my title blocks down. You see how they will align with each other. Can shorten it up. I think it looks a little neater when they're shorter like that. And then you can make yourself a new sheet and continue with additional plans. Now, our site plan also has the roof plan in it, so I'm not going to do a separate roof plan. We don't really have anything on our ceiling plans, so I'm not going to do those. But let's continue making our sheets of drawings. This one, let's call the project name, and I could do this through the project information. But we'll call it the gas station. Whoa, station. And this sheet we'll call plans. Okay. And then let's make ourselves a new sheet for our exterior elevations and sections and all those. So we should have sheets for all of these drawings. I'll just go through making one more here. If you right click on this, choose new sheet, choose the title block that you've been using. Now, fun thing is Revit knows to rename this. I'll just call this sections or renumber it. And then we can come in and we can drag in our two sections. See how big they end up being on the sheet. Longitudinal section, transverse section. Now, when you do this, obviously you can see something is horribly wrong here, which is that these are different scales. I can select both of these by holding down Control and then change their scale all in one get-go. And this is just because as I was working, I must have fiddled around with the scale. Other fun thing you can do, there are other view properties that you can change, the detail level, the display model, and even things like whether or not the sun path is on. But for me, I'm going to go down to where it says crop view and crop region visible, and I'm going to uncheck that box, and that will make it invisible in both views. Finally, as you move these lines, see how they give a dashed, or move these views, it gives a dashed indicator of how close these are to each other. It will align them very nicely. So you'll have sheets like we did with the site plan and the floor plan. You'll have one with exterior elevations and sections. You'll have another sheet with interior elevations of just that main office. And those two axonometric drawings that we worked on. Finally, you'll have one sheet with interior and exterior perspectives. And that last one is a little tricky because you can see that, see how the sizes of these are different? They're just a little different because they're not scaled drawings, but they are easy to change their size. And if you just click on the drawing, and then on the toolbar here pops up a menu option for size crop. And if you click on that, it tells you the dimension, and you can basically just set that to be whatever dimension you want. So I'm going to choose 11 inches, and by locking the proportions, see how it changes the height? Actually, I think I want the height to be about 10 inches. Let's go with 10 inches so that it really fills the sheet. I hit apply, and you should see the drawing change size, and I'll click OK. And then this guy, I'll do the same. I'll click the size crop, lock the proportions, and make it also 10 inches high. I don't think I'm going to get them to be the same width. And that way they'll look nice on the sheet. And in this case, I'll just lay them out here so that they're kind of evenly spaced. But you see how that looks pretty good. I think I wouldn't get them the same width. You can absolutely come in and edit the crop region and get them to be the same width. So I'm not going to do every view on every sheet. Just to review, let's see, we have one sheet that has a site plan and a floor plan on it, another with sections and exterior elevations, another sheet with interior elevations, and the axonometric drawings, the two of them, the exploded one and the regular one, and then the interior and exterior perspectives on that final sheet. Okay, so you got all your sheets. How do you take them to the printer? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Here in your Revit interface, there's an Export PDF button, that red button up at the top of your screen. And there are many ways to export a PDF. First of all, you will want to browse and make sure you know where these are going to, because if you're like me, you export them and you always forget where you put them. So I'm going to send these to the desktop. And the name, file name, you'll actually get prompted for it again. The other thing is you can choose which sheets you want to print. And if you go down here and you click on the little button next to the little pencil button next to the selected views and sheets, you can actually tell it which sheets or even views that you want. And in fact, you can tell it, maybe I'm just going to have all sheets here. I haven't made any collections. Collections, you can actually have like a DD set and a CD set. We don't do that many sheets, so it's probably not really necessary. But anyway, you can have all these. You can even edit their print order, so you can make sure that they're going in the right order, which is kind of nice. Obviously, typically they're in ascending order. And then you can preview these guys to see what they're going to look like. And just click on each sheet. It'll show you what it's going to look like. But then just click select. So now you've got the sheet selected. Finally, you do want to make sure to figure out what sheet size you're going to do. Now, Revit will fit them to whatever page you put them on. We don't want that. We want 100% scaling. And using the sheet size, of course, is the best one. Arch D 24 by 36 is the way to go. Revit will typically center it when you do that. So the other thing is there are things like hiding the crop boundaries. we usually, if we have interior elevations, I uncheck that button because remember I changed the line weight on those interior elevations so that they could be have a nice heavy line. So anyway, I'll click export, and you can absolutely save these, and I'll say them, you know, whatever, SD, and like magic, you'll wait a couple minutes and it will print them out for you. And here's my beautiful PDF. And just don't forget, when you print these PDFs, you want to make sure that you are printing them to scale. These are scaled drawings, most of them, obviously not the perspectives that we happen to be looking at. And for our purposes, we're going to use these as a check print. So we're actually going to reduce them onto 11 by 17 color laser prints.